Welcome, guys. Welcome back to Linkor's Corner. I hope you're having a good day. Today I'm back with the history of coffee. I know I'm taking a little bit of a break when it concerns the Napoleonic series. I'll be back. Don't worry, the story is going on. I'm just I became really interested in this story and I want to do it. The next video I'm gonna do is, I promise, Napoleon. His retreat from Moscow. We're doing it. Swear. But today, what we're going to watch is History of Coffee Global Addiction, Extra History Part 2. Let's learn about coffee, guys.
1683, Vienna. After 2 grueling months, the siege of Vienna is over. The Ottoman army is fleeing back to Constantinople, and the victorious coalition is pillaging their abandoned camp. And Jerzy Franciszek Kolczyski was key to this victory. A Polish diplomat and spy, he'd managed to slip out of the city to get help. As a reward, he can pick anything from the spoils he wishes. But instead of gold or jewels, he picks several cartloads of coffee beans and starts the first coffee house in Vienna. At least that's the legend. An Armenian Christian actually opened the first one in 1685, and Kolczyski's own coffee house, the Blue Bottle, followed it shortly after. But while not the first Viennese cafe, the Blue Bottle was definitely the most innovative, because to combat coffee's bitter taste, Jerzy Kolczyski served his coffee with milk.
That was extra controversial back then.
Thanks so much to humankind for help filtered
Okay.
into Europe, how they fostered conversation and the development of business. But we'll let that steep for a minute and discuss the pressing matter that we're sure you're frothing at the mouth to know. What kind of coffee did they serve? Well, if you traveled back in time and walked into the Grecian or Jonathan's and paid a penny for a dish of coffee, what would it taste like? Gah, pretty dang gross, actually. In fact, you might not even recognize it as coffee. First off, the beans would have been stale, having been roasted at their origin and then transported in non-airtight containers on leaky ships. It was also prepared in Turkish style, with the beans boiled along with the water, which is fine if you like that. But due to European laws that taxed the sale of liquids by the barrel, it had to be pre-brewed, left to sit, and then reheated before serving. The
Ugh.
taste, however, wasn't really the point. Coffee was quite literally consumed as a drug, and the first coffee houses in London were well aware of this. In fact, they
What?
circulated handbills that described coffee as medicine that cured any number of complaints, while also pointing out that a businessman needing to work late into the night could use it to revive themselves. People, in other words, drank it for the buzz, both of the drug itself and the atmosphere of the coffee house. And not to put too fine a point on it, but that caffeine had an incredible effect. Because before coffee, the primary drink at all times of the day was alcohol. Tavern records from England and France show individuals drinking incredible amounts per day. And English and Dutch sailors were even given a gallon of beer.
I have a question or a thought here. Wasn't alcohol drank because water was not consumable, or there were a lot of bacterials, and it just wasn't sanitary to drink water, and it was better for your health to drink alcohol because it was less because of the alcohol it was less prone to bacterial infection. Whereas the water, it was very contaminated back then.
Per day, though granted that beer was only 1% alcohol, as a daily ration. Often you'll hear that this mass switch from alcohol to caffeine as Europe's most common drug, a depressant to a stimulant, created the Enlightenment and the Age of Revolution. But that's kind of too simplistic. Habitual heavy drinking continued through the next several centuries, and in fact a trip to the coffee house was often done to sober up after a long night in order to overindulge again. But as drunkenness became increasingly frowned upon in the 17th and 18th centuries, coffee became even more favorable as a tool for a more sober, punctual, and industrious society. Caffeine, however, did have an effect on the increasingly addicted population of Europe. English diarist and public servant Samuel Pepys claims he drank 25 cups a day, and French philosopher and novelist Voltaire supposedly drank 50.
Jesus
German
Christ!
composer Johann Sebastian Bach even wrote the Coffee Cantata, a short comedic opera about a father trying to break his daughter's caffeine addiction, in which she sings a love song to the drink, calling
And
it more
kills
delicious
herself.
than 1,000 kisses, and crooning that she must have her coffee. Honestly, hard same. So yeah, it's fair to say that people liked getting their fix, and it made them more productive. But the social chemistry of the coffee house also made it indispensable in the developing Enlightenment as a public forum for conversation, literature, and politics. In fact, many even began publishing daily or weekly journals to inform about recent events and intellectual arguments in order to keep everyone informed and raise the quality of the conversations. Some of which, like the Tatler and Spectator, even became papers and magazines later on. And coffee houses also broke the church, government, and university monopoly on knowledge, as these conversations moved into the public sphere. And before long, they got nicknamed Penny University.
It's insane when you think about the impact of this one particular drink that it had on the whole of history, especially Arabian and European history, because it, all the things that came out, because coffee in and of itself is pretty innocuous, but then you put it in this environment where people drink together and they share stories and they share knowledge and they share ideas, and it's insane how one small thing, as insignificant as a beverage, could have this insane of an effect on history.
Due to the ability to pay a penny for a cup of coffee and sit listening to the greatest minds of the age. And as we mentioned in the last episode, revolutionary politics often brewed along with the coffee. For instance, in 1675, King Charles II tried to shut down the coffee houses in London because the patrons were criticizing him. A decision so unpopular, he reversed it immediately. So, while coffee didn't create the Enlightenment, it definitely helped it along. But there was an economic problem: supply. See, this new European drug habit had a single supplier, the Yemeni port of Mocha. In fact, all coffee drunk in Europe came
What a
via the
monopoly,
Middle East
man.
or the Ottomans, meaning there was money to be made for any European country who could establish a new supply, which admittedly was hard to come by, because the sultans, understanding that they'd cornered the market, passed laws saying that beans must be roasted before shipment, meaning they could never be planted. So enterprising merchants looked for a way around. The Dutch East India Company were the first to break the monopoly, when one of their agents managed to smuggle a load of beans out of Yemen strapped to his body. The
Whoa.
climate in Amsterdam wasn't right, however, and in 1696, the East India Company decided to try planting a crop in a warmer place, their new colony on the island of Java. The crop took off, and by the beginning of the 1700s, Java coffee was supplying most of Europe, knocking the Arabic.
Is that where the company Java comes from when it concerns coffee? Because if it does, everything's related. So, if that's where the company Java comes from, I have a few questions. Is the name of the company because it originates way since 300 years ago? Is it because the coffee comes from Java, or is it just a sort of a memento to honor that tradition or that origin?
Arabica coffee from Yemen out of the European market. Others took note. In 1714, a French naval officer took a plant from the Royal Botanical Gardens in Paris, a diplomatic gift from the Netherlands, and took it to Martinique. According to his likely exaggerated account, the plant survived a storm, a pirate attack, and even a Dutch spy tried to kidnap it. From Martinique, the plant went all over the French Caribbean, until the Portuguese then stole it from the French when one of their agents supposedly flirted with a French colonial governor's wife until
course.
she gave him a bouquet with the beans hidden in the bottom, starting the Brazilian coffee industry. But if you're starting to sense a dark side behind these myths, you're not wrong. Europe's caffeine addiction not only drove the establishment of coffee plantations around the world, it also required massive use of African slave
I was going
labor
there.
to
I was going
produce.
there, but
In fact, the exploitation of coffee production helped lead to the Haitian Revolution and contributed to Brazil deforesting its coast
Okay, this
and
is
keeping
insane.
slavery until 1888.
this is insane when you think about it. First of all, there was slavery in Brazil until 1888. I didn't know that, but it's insane how history sort of unravels because of coffee, because of this addiction, because of the economy behind it.
Sadly, this is the legacy that in some ways continues to this day, where coffee growers and laborers often face poverty and exploitation, leading to the fair trade and single origin movements. And the world only got thirstier for the bean-based rocket fuel. Because while Britain, previously the world's largest coffee drinking nation, switched to tea, which was cheaper and easier to drink in the home, a new addict had entered the fray:
US?
the United
Yeah.
States. The American coffee habit began with the Revolution, when disputes over taxes on tea made switching to coffee a patriotic gesture. And despite its name, the Green Dragon Tavern, headquarters of the Sons of Liberty, was actually a combination pub coffee house. But it was the Civil War that really kickstarted America's addiction. The Union Army considered coffee a staple good and issued soldiers a daily ration. And many drank the equivalent of 10 cups a day, often brewing it out of water so dirty even the horses wouldn't drink from it. The Confederates, by contrast, had their caffeine supply pinched off by the Union blockade and had to make do with unappetizing substitutes, brewed from roots, leaves, and ground peanuts. And funny thing, if you get hundreds of thousands of soldiers addicted to coffee, it turns out that the demand explodes once the government isn't giving them their daily grind. After the war, and during westward expansion, coffee quickly became part of American life. So much so that a whole industry developed to supply the need. These branded coffee companies, like Folgers, would roast huge quantities of beans in the East and ship them west in airtight sealed cans, pre-ground and ready for
Whoa.
consumption in the home, meaning it
I know
finally
Folgers.
tasted fresh and good. Then, Italian coffee culture made the next great leap after World War II, introducing the espresso, which I mispronounce espresso all the time.
Yeah.
A small concentrated cup made under pressure, meant to be drunk fast while standing at a counter. And by mixing it with foamed or heated milk, they found you could make a massive range of drinks. Drinks that, ironically, became much more popular in the rest of the world, while most Italians still prefer their espresso black. And that's pretty much how we got here. From a mysterious plant that made goats dance to a worldwide industry.
It's insane to think about how the effect this small little, is it a plant? I'm gonna guess yes. Had an effect. Oh, it's a seed, if you will. The effect that it had on world history. I mean, it's the same with a lot of other plants that drove the that made their population and people in general addicted, and then the economy up. The cocoa plant, for example. But yeah, this was really interesting. It was really interesting because I didn't really think about it, but coffee had an incredible, uh, uh, not only incredible impact on history, but it was such a big impact that I don't even know if it can even be quantified. Because then the question becomes what revolutions or what ideas or what uh, progress was made because of coffee. Because someone might have gotten the idea of doing something in a coffee shop, but I don't know. But it was really interesting. It was a really good series. Go watch Extra History. It was a really good channel. I'm not a big coffee drinker myself. I'm more of a cappuccino guy or coffee with milk. I'm not a big, just a black coffee. I like it. But other than that, this was a really good series. I hope you learned as much as I did. It was really good. And I'll see you guys next time. See ya.